And welcome back to the shop. We got the 62 again, surprise. And so last week I was milling over all the different possibilities and options for trying to get some better fuel into this thing, so I can run some more boost and utilize the S480, because really running an S480 on less than 10 pounds is, really not ideal. If I were to buy everything new and I didn't already have this turbo, I probably would have gone with 78, 75. Well, actually, I probably would have gone with that T4 S480 that I had on Little Red, and I think I put one on Clifford. Was the last turbo I had on it when I sold it. But this being a T6 turbo, this turbo again will support 1300 horsepower. It's a billet wheel race cover from Jose at Forced Inductions, and like I say, I already had the turbo. I already had a lot of this stuff, so that's kind of what drove building the truck this way, and kind of replicates similar combos I've done in the past. But when I went to the 6.2, I didn't think about the compression ratio. And what I've done is I had it sprung to about 11 or 12 PSI on the wastegate. And when Michael and I were driving it, Michael said it would kind of come up to about 12 pounds. And then when it opened, it leveled off around 11 pounds. So I went ahead and lowered the spring rate in it because it was obviously a little too much for pump gas 93. So the springs that they give you for the wastegate aren't very, it doesn't really have a whole lot of different options. They have 3 pounds, or 3 springs that are basically 6 pounds. So it comes with 5 springs, and 3 of them are 6-pound springs. So I don't know why. I wanted like an 8-pound spring, but there was one that was like 6.5 or something. So that's what I did. Got the colder plugs in it, and I also got a flex fuel sensor. So I'm going to put it right here on the return side, and then since we went down on the wastegate, I'm going to put in the dual Mac valve boost control so the Holly can run that. And then when you do that, you got to have a dome sensor. So I have to set all that up. So I'm going to try to utilize the system as it is, and then put with the flex fuel, see where that gets us. There is one station within 10-20 miles from here that I can get pump E85, and I'll give that a shot for now. So at least that way I want it set up where I can drive it around on pump gas, not have any spark knock, and have a good safe tune up in it. And then I also want to be able to turn it up if the need arises. And I don't know, I've got a 55-gallon drum. I guess I used to have a nitrous car back in the day that ran on E98, and I would just, always have a 55-gallon drum of E98. But then, it's just a lot to keep the right consistency of E85 in the tank to achieve the power goals. So that's the only thing one of the things I don't like about E85. The other thing is, if I did the dual fuel and had another fuel system that was basically just sitting there with E85 in it, the inherent nature of E85 is to gel up and congeal, and it just wreaks havoc on the fuel system. So it sits behind the injectors, clog up the screens in them, and it can be very problematic and very nasty if it's not constantly run through. And I think Lucas makes a additive that you can run, and I would run that when I had mine as well. But E85 is kind of some nasty stuff. So when I did have my dual fuel setup on it, I had race gas in the second system, so that way you didn't need as big of a pump, line size, and injectors to run it, and it didn't have the congealing properties of E85. So, I was just thinking about all that over the week, and again, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this thing, because again, I want to be able to have it where I can utilize the full potential of everything. But I'm sure that this thing on about 7 pounds of boost would probably be, pretty decent. But again, with the E85, I'll have more power potential. The thing there then is going to be that it's a 535 fuel pump, and these are only 100-pound injectors. So Michael was telling me that he had 347 cubic inch setup, and he had 80 pounds and a 450 and made 750 at the tires, and that was pretty much everything maxed out. So with the 535 and a 100-pound injector, hopefully we can crest the 800 mark and be okay there. The other thing about this fuel tank that I have in it is it does have a 3/8 pipe thread connection on the side and the front of it, where it will allow me to run a separate pickup on there. So I guess you could either run an in-tank pump or use the feed that's in there. So that was one thing I was thinking, is I could tee into that and then run another fuel pump, and then have the Holly turn it on once we got to a certain threshold or limit on the other pump or something. So it's kind of how I had the Caprice set up. I had 2 fuel pumps running off the same tank, and then the second fuel pump with a check valve and everything, so neither one of them would backfeed each other, and that worked out pretty good, except for my secondary pump was a inline 750, I think it was, the MagnaFuel 750 pump. So when it came on, it was just a huge inrush of fuel, and it took some time with Michael tuning everything to get it dialed in. So with both pumps running, to have a nice smooth transition into the fuel curve. So again, that's what I'm going to try initially, is just put the flex fuel on it. That'll be the simplest thing to do right now without trying to go full retard, which I tend to do most of the times. But it's just, you think about this stuff, and then you're trying to just trying to get the most out of what you have, and it's just such disappointment when it doesn't achieve over 12 pounds of boost and you're already hitting spark knock. Then you're just we got to go 16 injector and get crazy and do something exotic or whatever. But if you look though, Devin Vanderhoof, he's very talented and has a very nice Mustang that he built. He runs 24 injectors, so I'm just saying, he has a dual fuel setup. Now I was watching one of his videos the other day. He has a very nice car, and I cannot imagine how much money he has in that car, because everything he has on that car is just top notch. And I think I mentioned it on another video. When he takes his car apart, which it seems to be quite frequently, he will not reuse bolts. So if whatever bolts he takes off, he I guess throws them away, or I don't know what he does with them, but he puts all new bolts, which is surprising to me. But I also have some buddies that work at Mercedes, and they say when they do a brake job that they're required to replace caliper bolts and whatever bolts they remove too. So I guess at some point in time they had a failure and that became their method of doing things. So one thing we've done, you may not notice looking at it, but I did put some coilovers on the back. So I figured since we had coilovers on the front, we might as well put them on the back. So when I was measuring and trying to figure out what height shocks or coilovers I needed, I didn't even think about it, but they're adjustable. They're single adjustables, and these were at full loose on the front because when I was putting it together, it's easier to manipulate the shock and everything putting it together. So I had them on full loose and then forgot to adjust them. So I think they're 10-way adjustable, so I just put them in the middle for now. So I was wondering why it was kind of, floaty or soft or whatever in the corners and stuff. So, but of course that might be too stiff now. But anyway, I had forgotten they were there, so I'll play around with the dial on them and see where they go. But dang, that is pretty solid. I might have to take a couple clicks out of that. But so on the rear, this has the long trailing arm set up. So it has it's got these long arms that come up to here and then all the way down, and then it has the coil spring went right here, and I had a 4-inch shorter spring. And so what I did is I took the shock mount off and then had to pull the bed off and redo the top bracket and moved everything. So now I got coilovers on the rear, and I gotta go back and look how many settings these have, because it seemed like a couple clicks on it was a pretty solid stiff ride as well. So I guess that's kind of what you get when you do the single adjustable. It has to adjust compression and rebound in one knob. So I don't know why I did that, but I can't leave anything alone, so I did it. But I haven't driven it yet, so I want to go out and drive it and see how it does. But what I plan on doing is I've already gone on to the website that Dave Chappelle used when him and Freiberger did a 4-link on the muscle truck. I think it's Barnes Off-Road or something like that. But I looked them up, and then just from watching the video, looked at what parts they used, and then put together a cart, put them on the shopping cart. And I think I had like 36 items or something, and it was about $1,500 for the brackets and the heim joints and all the little stuff that they got for free, I'm sure. But anyway, that's ultimately what I want to do. Is I've always wanted to build my own 4-link and everything. So I've been trying to look at it and research it and figure out how to do it and how to set it up with the bar links and the bar angles and all that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that. So whenever I decide to spend $1,500 again, I'll go ahead and get all that stuff ordered. But one thing I did notice was, because this truck is an X frame, it's got these bars like a part of the frame that comes across like an X, coincidentally, right? X frame. So I'll have to brace off of another angle, and from what I'd read, you want the brackets from the barn site would put it at I think it was 22 angles this way. So then you wanted around 40-degree angles, which would keep the rear end centered, and you wouldn't need a panhard bar and whatnot, which is kind of what I'm after, is just to have a triangulated 4-link, so then that keeps the rear end under the truck and I don't need a panhard bar, and then we use the coilovers to hold the weight of the truck up. So one thing too, is I had these springs left over from years gone by. The springs on the coilovers, so they were a 12-inch 250-pound rate spring, and I looked at a calculator online, and it actually came up to about a 250-pound spring. Typically on a Fox body Mustang or a race car or something like that, you want like around a 100-pound spring or a 120-pound spring, somewhere in there. You want a lighter spring, a taller spring, so you have the more stored energy, so when you launch you get the separation and plant the tire really good. So that was the other thing I had to do, was in measuring for the length at where I was going to be at ride height, and then you want to get as much extension as you can. You want to run the longest shock as you can, and then you want 60% compressed or whatever. So I did all the numbers and calculated it out and picked that height coilover. Oh, and the other thing was the angle. This was actually the one that was on there. So I mean, look how long that thing is. I mean, that is a long shock. And then the thing is with it compressed, the sleeve was like, it was down in this area, so there wasn't much compression left in the springs. I mean, you look how compressed it was, and the angle under it was way back like this. So everything I'd read, you want the shock as close to 90 as you can, so it's basically the shock's just straight up and down. But like I say, the angle, it was really laid back, so it felt to me like it was bottoming out, and it also still had the bump stops in it. So I removed the bump stops, and then I had bought some tabs to make the top bracket, but I was able to just cut the old shock brackets off and move them forward and reutilize them, so that worked out pretty good. And I'll be curious to see how it drives doing that. But with the coilover adjusted all the way down, it's at the exact same ride height as it was before, so that worked out pretty good. So I might need to go to a little lighter spring, so I can maybe lower it just a little more, or just get the right height, which as it is right now, it's a 1-inch rake measured from the body line there, so it's 1 inch higher in the rear than the front, which is backwards from what kids are doing these days. But anyway, that's the update on this thing. I've got this thing going on. I'm about to get on the harness on this thing and try to get this truck running this week. I know he's ready to get it back, and I'm ready to get it back to him. So then I can get mine on the lift and finish wiring the flex fuel and all the other stuff I mentioned earlier. So that's where we're at with it. Try to get it on flex fuel, and then see how much boost we can run on E85 with the 535 and the 100-pound injectors, and we'll go from there.